Let's hear it for our next speaker, Brooke Kendall. She has spent nearly 20 years helping people and teams connect with clarity and purpose. Brooke Kendall brings communication because she's an expert, keynote speaker who brings fresh insight to how we lead, collaborate, and understand each other. She's taught at the college level, helped corporate leaders and individual contributors evolve their communication and lead global leadership programs. However, like many of us, she's learned some of her best lessons in everyday life, including some of those days that started with cheese. Please welcome, loudly and as best as you can, Brooke Kendall.
I'm in the kitchen making dinner, and I need Parmesan cheese. I know it comes in wedges, but I'm looking for a canister. So I move to the fridge, and I don't see it, which is wrong because I know I just got a new canister that week, so I know we can't be out. I tend to move fast, so I think what probably is happening is that I tend to slow down, get a little more intentional. So I go back to the fridge, and I slow down. And I still don't find the cheese. And I walk away from the fridge, and now I'm annoyed because I know that I just got new Parmesan cheese. So I walk over to the fridge and I swing that door open like I'm going to teach it a lesson, like I'm somehow mad at the fridge, you know? I'm going to start at the top and I'm going to touch everything. I'm going to touch every item in the fridge, and I'm going to find the Parmesan. But I don't find it. I have to move on. My kids still want to eat. This wasn't a good enough excuse to not have dinner for them. A couple days later, I open up the fridge, and right in the front is the Parmesan cheese. And in that moment, I knew exactly what had happened. I had ordered and picked up groceries earlier in the week, and the normal Parmesan that I always get that comes in a very recognizable green canister, you can probably picture it, it was out, and so they subbed me the store brand, which had a white and red label. I had literally touched it, and I didn't see it. And then I was really struck in this moment with an unfortunate realization that I was probably doing this in other areas of my life too, that I was so sure that I knew what something was, what something meant, who someone was, that I didn't see what was actually there. So in the wake of the Parmesan incident, I started asking myself a question. It's kind of become a personal and professional reset button for me. What else? What else could this be? What else could this mean? What else could this become? What else could be the reason for that behavior? I've taught communication for nearly 20 years, and every textbook I've ever taught out of has perception as the first chapter. Before we can talk about your nonverbals or your word choice or your group dynamics or your speaking skills, we've got to talk about how you see yourself and the world around you, because everything flows from that. If we want to get intentional about our communication, we have to get intentional first about our perception. Because we do this in communication often. We are certain, we assume, we fill in the blanks, and sometimes we are wrong. There's a theory for this when it comes to human behavior. It's called attribution theory. There's a lot of research showing that attributions, or the reasons we assign to behavior, they don't just change the way we communicate, they also change outcomes and behaviors. A lot of research, a very salient and personal example for me. Right after I graduated college, I was doing some substitute teaching in an elementary school classroom. I subbed a couple of times in one specific classroom, and I very quickly identified that kid, the one who pushed the buttons. He was defiant and destructive, and he made teaching, quite frankly, really challenging. And I am and not at all proud to admit that I had the most reductive explanation for his behavior that there could possibly be. He's a bad kid. Maybe bad parenting, but he is certainly just a bad kid. We were doing a lesson around, I think maybe Veterans Day or Memorial Day, and I was reading this set of questions to the kids, and I said, who is a hero? Who do you know that's a hero? And some kid in the circle said, well, Joey's dad is a hero. And in my head, I'm like, well, he sure is. He puts up with Joey on a regular basis. Like, I am not generous in this moment at all. I said, but I didn't say that out loud, of course. I said, oh, tell me more about that. Well, through that conversation and then a couple others, it turns out that Joey's dad had been back to back deployed to the Middle East. It had been almost 18 months since Joey had seen his dad. And in that time, his parents had divorced, his mom had remarried, and he now had a new stepdad and new siblings. And virtually nothing in his life was the same. He was scared and angry. Attribution theory doesn't say all behaviors are okay. It says, if I change the reasons I assign to your behaviors, I show up differently. If I am generous in my interpretation, you might begin to show up differently. And that's what happened with Joey and I. He was still challenging. He was still the most challenging kid in the class. But my shift in how I saw him did shift our communication. Okay, so what else? I think this is a great question. I also needed a little more meat. So I came up with a framework that I could put into place when I was feeling stuck. So when you are feeling stuck about a product, a person, a process, what can you do to get yourself out of that space? If we want to become intentional communicators, we have to get intentional about our perception. Okay, so the first thing I want you to think about is getting generative. Where do you hear this word all the time now? Generative.
AI.
Yeah. AI is actually fabulous at being generative. I don't think it's because of what AI has. It has all the same information and ideas that you have. It can access it maybe a little faster. But I think it's great at generation because of what it doesn't have. It doesn't have your insecurities, your self-doubt, your baggage, your past boss who shot you down every time you tried something new. AI will do whatever you tell it to. The only limits are the ones you put on it. So if I say, I would like 300 ideas for a toothpick, AI will give me 300 ideas for a toothpick. Some of them I don't think are probably great. I thought about, could I make a hamster fence out of a toothpick? I'd like to see someone try, but I don't know that it's a great idea. But removing crumbs from my phone, that is probably a good idea for AI. But you know what? If I said, AI, I have a name for mine, but I'm not going to tell you. I'll tell you after, if you'd like. I say, AI, that's a terrible idea. And you know what? I do this sometimes. My AI doesn't blush, doesn't shut down, doesn't get ashamed, just goes, ha ha, you're right, Brooke. Let me try again. Your brain can actually do the same thing. You just have to program it in the same way. Generation is a fantastic way to start thinking about what else could be true in this moment. It works great as an individual. I often will sit down and go, oh, if I could do anything right now, what would I do? And I write down everything. It also is great in a group. Groups are good at generation because they can feed off each other. As long as you follow what I like to call the Family Feud rule. Family Feud, the great American game show. Family Feud, you have the lineup of the family. They're supposed to answer a question. How many people? ... So we come to Aunt Patty. Aunt Patty, how many, or what is name an animal that starts with the letter B? And Aunt Patty says, zebra. And there might be a pause, but then do you know what the whole family does after that? Good answer, good answer. By like any objective metric, this is not a good answer. It is an animal, but it doesn't start with the letter B. But this whole game rests on people being generative. If we say, Aunt Patty, that's stupid. When we get to Uncle Ralph, he's going to be like, I don't know. I can't think of it. I don't want to be stupid. We'll shut down. So generation works best when you can generate without limits. What could be possible? Because almost anything could be. So let yourself think generatively. And then we need to think about the next step, because your perceptions are wonderful and valid and important and limited. Not because you're a bad person, you're just a person. So the next thing I want you to think about in getting yourself out of this stuck what else space is getting some outside perspective. I think this is why consultants are really popular for organizations. We need somebody with a fresh set of eyes. I literally have looked at this so many times, I cannot see another way out of it. And then, someone else comes in and goes, oh, how about this? Oh my God, how come I haven't thought of that? This is because you know what you know. You have your own experience. There's a communication theory called the Johari window, named creatively after the two guys who created it, Joe and Harry. No joke, that's why it's named that. The Johari window is a communication tool that helps us get to know ourselves and the world around us through self-disclosure and feedback. All right, so let me explain to you what this might look like for me. Up here in the top corner is the open window pane. This is what I know about me and you know about me. If you had any conversation with me, you probably know I have 2 tween-teen children. Being a mom is a big part of who I am, and I think they're pretty cool at this age. I talk about them a lot. So if you know me, you know this about me. Very open. I don't like sushi. And it's really cool to like sushi. And I want people to think I'm cool. So I don't talk about the fact that I don't like sushi very often. I say, Brooke, do you want to go to sushi? I go, I'm just not in the mood today. I probably won't be tomorrow or the next day either, but I don't really want you to know that. So I keep this piece of me hidden, this I don't like sushi piece, except for now. We've just moved it into the open pane. You know this about me. Actually, I'm going to take it a step further. I actually think it's gross. I think it's weird that any of you eat it. We're now in the open part, okay? No. I'm still keeping some stuff here. It's okay. It's okay to have some things hidden. This is the things I choose to tell you about myself. In the unknown category, this is what I don't know and you don't know. This is just discovery. I do not know if I like pickleball because I am 1 out of 1 American who has not yet picked up a paddle. And I'm not gonna. I'd like to keep the mystery alive. We're going to keep this one in the unknown category. Does Brooke like pickleball? We may never know. It's going to stay there. The thing that outside perspective really addresses is this one here at the top right. Because every single one of us, so the theory says, and I think we all know, has a part of ourselves that we are blind to. Again, this is not because you're bad, it's just because you're human and we're kind of limited. This axis over here, what this is measuring is feedback, right? So if I have low feedback and low self-disclosure, that's the unknown stuff. If I have low feedback, these are the things I'm blind to. There are simply parts of yourself that you will not see. You can't. You have to ask people that you trust, people who look at the world in a different way than you. If you are trying to ask what else, if you are trying to get unstuck, ask somebody who sees the world in a different way than you. This isn't particularly helpful if you go to your coworker who also hates your boss, and every time you say, what do you think about our boss? And he goes, I hate her. I go, me too. You're still blind. We have not expanded that. We have not shrunk that window pane at all. Guys, I cannot see around this. What do you see? What else could be true here? What am I missing? If I had literally asked any other teacher at that school about Joey, if I'd gotten any other outside perspective, I would have gotten to the what else of it a lot sooner instead of just staying in my stuck piece. So think about who in your life do you ask for feedback and how do you react when they give it to you? It's a big issue for leaders. I don't know any leaders who don't know that they're not supposed to ask for feedback, and most of them do, but often their reaction says the opposite. They hear the feedback, they get defensive. The team member says they actually don't want to reduce that blind portion of their window. So make sure you are getting outside perspective. The last piece of the framework might seem a little counterintuitive because of what I just told you. Generate a billion ideas. Bing, 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 bing. Get outside perspective. Probably added more ideas. Lots going on in your head right now. I'm going to suggest that you get quiet. We live in a very noisy place, not just auditory noise. There is stimuli coming in everywhere. You want to talk about intentionality? I do not find quiet in my day unless I intentionally seek it out. This does not happen by accident. And it is in those quiet moments that insight often comes. You cannot get to self-reflection and truth without some quiet time. In fact, I think some of us keep our worlds very, very noisy because we don't actually want to get to this last space, this quiet space. Quiet is incredibly personal. What quiet works for you, what it looks like for you, it's different for each person. For me, it's walking. It's a really meditative space for me. For you, it might be prayer or yoga or playing with your pet or an instrument or music. I actually have a friend who says that motocross is his quiet place, which feels counterintuitive, right? Because it's an incredibly loud sport. But as he explains it to me, as he goes around that track, his brain is so present in that moment that everything else gets quiet. He actually finds insight in the motocross track because that's where he's at his most present. That's where the ideas crystallize. Most people would agree that Albert Einstein had some ideas that unstuck the world. Solitude, a quiet life, actually stimulates creativity. Don't fall into the myth that you have to be constantly stimulated to be creative. There's got to be a pause in a quiet space. How about jazz musician Alice Coltrane, who said, when you quiet your mind, you can enter a world of clarity, peace, and understanding. I encourage you to figure out what quiet looks like for you, how it works for you, and to make some intentional space for it in your life. So the next time you are feeling stuck up against a wall, I cannot figure out what to do next, get generative. Let yourself think about all the possibilities because they are nearly endless. Get some outside perspective. Ask someone you trust what else could be true in this situation, and then intentionally make space for quiet. Because it's in that quiet moment when we're able to move from automatic, reactive communication to intentional and purposeful communication. Thank you.